How's the Josh, ladies? Can I hear it louder? How's the Josh? Wonderful. Shaheen, Radhika, thank you so much for joining us on SheShakti. Radhika, let me start with you. How do you see the role of women in India's digital revolution? And, I wanted to know the kind of impact that they're making in the transformation in the tech landscape. It's on. It's on. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Allow me to start by thanking News18 for having me here in front of this beautiful audience. It is a privilege, and it's one of my firsts. So, I'm a novice on the stage, so I'm just setting the expectation there. Coming back to your question, Avantika, what is the role of women in digital India, right? I think they have a powerful role to play. Are they there yet? Well, we have not tapped into it fully. They can play an amazing role. If I can take a step back and look at the world picture, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, women, education, technology are at the core, which means if you address these three areas, it can have a catalyst effect on the rest of the development areas, whether it is progress, poverty. And I think we agree to that because a woman can influence people, environments in so many ways. She's the center of a family. When it comes to digital too, India now has, I think, one of the highest sex ratios. We're almost 50-50, 50% and 50% women and men, which means the role is much more profound now because we need to start contributing to the country's economy, which is now said to be based on the backbone of digital technology. Now, if that answered your question, they have a lot of role to play. They are poised a little better than they were yesterday.
Okay.
Okay.
So there is an improvement, a very drastic one.
I'm optimistic, yes.
All right. Okay. On that optimistic note, Shaheen, you have earned global recognition for your dedication, for your efforts to education equity. I want to know what was the starting point of your very inspiring journey in building this extremely powerful network of education leaders that are impacting these young lives. And interestingly, I really wanted to know from you, Shaheen, how has being a woman leader influenced this journey?
Thanks, Avantika. It's so lovely to be here. When you say the words global recognition, I get reminded that there are 320 million children in the country that deserve and need an excellent education, and the work we've done so far is really a drop in that larger ocean. But my start was very simple. At 12, I started volunteering over my summer vacations. At 18, I moved to India because something in my heart told me not to go back. I was studying at Tufts University at the time, and I saw a few children. They ran up to a taxi and they were begging. And I remember one of them being a very beautiful little girl, coincidentally. And I looked at them and I said, anything I can do here in my country for children is probably more important. And so I dropped out of university, made the very difficult phone call to my parents, telling them that I wanted to stay and do something for India's children. And I did the most important thing I've ever done in my life. I walked into a community and I just started teaching. And I think that act of sitting with a few children and teaching changed my life.
That's true. And what an inspiring journey it has been. Just for our audiences, I've also been a Teach for India fellow, and I take immense pride in that. I've done 2-year fellowship and I taught young kids in a low-income private school, thanks to Shaheen.
Avantika, can I interrupt? I need to tell a quick story because I've never had the honor of sharing a stage with Avantika, but Avantika was a Teach for India teacher in our second year, and she'd come 10 years she'd worked as a news anchor before becoming a Teach for India teacher. And she came in, and the first time she met her children, she was very angry because her kids were so far behind where they needed to be. She didn't actually think that it was possible. And yet she told me, she said, you know what, I have one thing, I have ambition. I think the story is important for women especially to hear. And I remember telling her, you can do it. And she said, I have ambition and I will get my kids where they need to be. And she taught not far from here, Sangam Vihar, in a low-income community. Her children couldn't read and write a 3-letter word. And a year and a half later, I walked into her classroom. Her children were falling off their seats with excitement and reading, get this, the unabridged version of Oliver Twist. This is a grade 6
SheShakti
text. So, at the risk of embarrassing her, I think, you know that...
I thought this was, I was supposed to be questioning.
It's a story of what is possible, and what is possible for
very
women.
Flattering. It was a tough journey, though. Radhika, I wanted to ask you, you know, digital connectivity and digital inclusion is a very powerful tool for women's empowerment. And digital equity also ensures equitable access to education and workplace opportunities. But still, there are just so many barriers and challenges to women advancing in the tech space. How do you and Women in Tech Global help to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, true that. The gender paradox, if everybody's aware, you know, our girls are doing great with the studies in STEM. So, but there's such a leaky pipe when they get to the careers, right? So we have pretty much about 43% of our girls who graduated of STEM studies, but they really do not get to STEM careers. And even if they do, then there's a leaky pipe ahead where they don't really grow. Now, it's, of course, because of the barriers and, you know, the lack of adequate equity programs. If I had to tell my story, for the first 10 years of my career in tech, I was myself a pretty, you know, of a taskmaster, and I feel miserable when I look back. Most of my team members were boys, guys, couple of girls, and I would always feel, you know, oh, it's a unisex word, you know. If it was raining and the girls said, oh, we had to go home, I would like, see, the boys are not complaining, so you don't want, you know, I would do that. And as I grew in my profession and had the exposure, you know, the exposure is so important, you know, to the global practices, the kind of, how the traction was, how the world was gaining traction on the conversations around diversity, equity, inclusivity, you know, I kind of realized I've been like really mean, you know, equity is so important. It's just like if there is somebody who's on a wheelchair, but he's as talented or she's as talented as anybody else,
Yes.
you need to give them the ramp, you know, to get to where they can work with, you know, a full power. So if there is a woman just having a child to care for, I think we need to change the narrative from saying, hey, you know what, you're not going to be able to contribute enough, to saying, hey, I need to tap into your potential. Tell me what you need. Let me give you that. And if you do that, it is the companies that will gain. Because you do not want to miss on the unique perspective that a woman can give. The creativity. And if you're building solutions, we're building it for women who pretty much make half of your consumers. Right?
Absolutely.
So we need to tap into that potential. And what we are doing as women in tech, and this is the exposure that I'm getting, you know, I must admit, the exposure that I'm getting to the changes that are happening globally, and also being a part of a multinational company, Omnicom, the Omnicom group of companies. I work for Predera, and then there's Analect, there's the Omnicom Precision Marketing Group, which is our parent company. It is in the culture. The way I speak today it's just because it has been pushed into the cultural backbone of the company. So we need to get to the culture, whether it is a coffee table meet or whether it is in the boardroom. We want to make sure that all conversations have this radar for
Wonderful.
equality and equity.
That's
If somebody is not speaking, you're not giving the focus to just the person who's speaking.
Absolutely.
You're taking a step back. So we've had all these programs and only they have sensitized us. So you must have these programs that sensitize the companies, the sponsors, executive sponsors,
Right.
why they need to do it.
Right. And that's fascinating. Shaheen, I wanted to know you, how has your leadership approach helped in the vision and most importantly the operations of the other organizations that you're working with? And most interestingly, I want to ask you that how do you think women today can play an important role in shaping the education framework in our country?
Such a big question.
I know.
But I'll choose maybe two aspects that have felt consistent, I think, with my leadership. One is just belief and vision. I think I've believed a lot, and I think for women to shine and for us to enable other girls and women to shine, we have to really believe. We have to believe in ourselves, believe in others. I think I've always been able to see things in people that often they were not yet able to see in themselves. I think the other is just love as an operating principle. I'm a big believer that however big the problems in the world are, the solution is not to be angry. The world doesn't need more anger. The world needs a lot of love. I remember many years ago formally introducing love as a core value at Teach for India. And the day we did that, I was sitting with colleagues of mine, and most of them got up and started laughing and walked out of the room, and people caught me and they said, you know, love is such a loaded word, not love, Shaheen. And I said, no, love. Because if we love ourselves, each other, our country, our world, then all of our actions are different. And what happened 2 days later was very beautiful. I got a call from one of our students, 12-year-old Vijay. He lives down the road from my home in Mumbai. And he said, Didi, he said, I have something very important to tell you. So I said, okay, what is it, Vijay? And he said, no, it's so important, I have to come and meet you. So he came over with a friend of his, sat down and said, Didi, you have introduced love as a core value, and I'm sure people are laughing at you. And I said, wow, news travels fast, like this child already 12 years old knows about this. And he said, I came to tell you one thing. He said, I came to tell you, even if people laugh and don't understand, never change the core value of love, because that is what the world needs. And I think my aspiration, and many times each day I'm not able to operate with love, but my aspiration every day when I wake up is, can I be a little more kind, a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more loving? So that's who I've tried to be. I think, what is it going to take for women? And I think Jaya told that very hard-hitting example of the woman with an oxygen mask in a kitchen. I think we need to start, if we want to avoid that, we need to start when our girls are really little, before society has conditioned them. I think the school and the education system has a huge role to play. Today in TFI classrooms, girls play football, girls speak up equally, and when they don't, we encourage them to. There's so much that goes into solving that problem, Avantika, but I think there's a lot of leverage in the school system. And
you know, Shaheen truly believes in the power of love, which we journalists don't really do. And I was always cynical about it. And I said, Shaheen, but how can you handle this challenge with love? You know, because we always look at the negative aspect of things.
And if you may, Shaheen, you really have to be in that elevated state. I mean, to give love, because if it's love, it's always women that we look at as a personification of, somebody who's caring and giving love. But just one point, Shaheen, and this is something that I've been talking to the girls whom I mentor, saying that feel hurt. I tell them, because one thing that has not changed about me is I still feel hurt. And I feel it helps me because only when you feel hurt, you're able to do something about it, act about it, right? So I had tears in my eyes maybe when I was just 25, when, there were people obstructing your path where you're walking, or, to raising a hand or shutting you off, I would well up with tears and say, why are you doing this? And to now, I still feel hurt. The tears are inside, but I just feel hurt and you do something about it. So you got to take an action, and otherwise they'll think, oh, you're full of love and it's okay to walk a little bit.
Speaking of that, it still happens in
Yeah.
workplaces.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the workplaces,
Yeah.
Radhika, are still very patriarchal. So I wanted to ask you that how can women break through those stereotypes and thrive in an environment where they feel empowered and secure?
One thing, I mean, it has to happen at all levels, is when another woman is being subject to something, I think we all just need to stand up. I've done it in boardrooms, where when maybe there's just another woman or girl and her point of view is kind of sidelined and somebody else is given a chance to talk, I interject and tell them, hey, let's pause a moment and think about what she said. Let's do. So I think even if just one woman is there by another woman's side, that is a solid support. We need to do that. Each of us need to have a motto to say, I'm going to just lift at least maybe two. One is too less. At least in India, we've got to get at least two women up to where we are. And this is something we are advocating both at the global level and in India.
How lovely. And that should be the endeavor. Shaheen, I wanted to ask you that how was your interaction with Wendy Kopp in 2006? And how difficult was it for you to incorporate Wendy's model or the concept of Teach for America into the Indian concept or Indian curriculum? Given the socio-economic and cultural differences and all the challenges in the communities that you work in.
So my encounter with Wendy started Teach for America as a student at Princeton University 20 years before Teach for India started. And I went to meet her to really ask her, why can't we do something similar in India? What would it take to get our nation's best and brightest young people to fight for educational equity? She sort of looked at me, she was a little bit intrigued, got back to me a couple of days later, said, I actually brought it up with my board and they said, focus on America, the problem is big enough. And I went back again a month later and I said, just come to India. And she came to India for the first time, and we went into low-income communities, we went into college campuses, and she was struck not just by the differences, but by the similarities. And by that, I mean there are young people everywhere that want to build the nation. And that's how we started talking and working and conceptualizing Teach for India. But really it was that original idea of Wendy's that unless a large number of our best and brightest and most committed young people work in and for the development sector, the problems are not going to shift. And that's what we really held on to over here.
Radhika, very quickly, do you think COVID-19 was the game changer that it, carved out a very prominent role for digital technologies in ensuring economic transactions, and these digital platforms kind of opened these new markets and opportunities for women who didn't have access to work earlier?
Yes, the women part aside, COVID definitely kind of turned around the way we look at digital. Although, as an Indian, I would feel we should have gone to the position where we were actually running the platforms and having consumers elsewhere in the world, because the US kind of tapped into it, the Western market. They opened up and they had consumers here. But we can do it right now, too. And for women, pardon me, I may not have the statistics, but on a personal front, I was privy to, few women who managed to get opportunities post-COVID. it helped, the COVID period kind of helped them take a step to learn some skills.
Right.
Yeah, and then, kind of when the demand was there, they kind of banged on the opportunity. And did they do it as much as on a larger scale? I would like to believe no, because there were other challenges. People were struggling with the family, going through a lot of crisis, whether health, finance. So I would not like to look at COVID as an opportunity, but
sure.
Yeah.
And very quickly, Shaheen, what are the key goals for Teach for India now, and how do you plan to expand its impact?
We're 1,000 Teach for India fellows now, teaching across 8 cities. We want that to grow to be 50,000 leaders. So it's a big goal over the next 8-9 years. We've also spread now to rural India through our TFIX program, where we find entrepreneurs to run excellent education programs in that part of the country. So really, the goal is just to build a force and a movement of leaders that will not stop work until every child in the country gets a really excellent, equitable education.
Well, more power to both of you. Thank you, Shaheen. Thank you, Radhika. Thank you both so much.
So privileged to be here. I enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Let's have a huge round of applause, ladies, for our 2 guests. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shaheen. Thank you, Radhika, for joining us.